This video is about to teach you so much about Evil Dead the game. You're going to become a much better player after you're done watching it. And let's just start with the first lesson here. It's going to be melee speed. So 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then hoppa. Now we can take this whole action and make it much faster. Let's test it out on this guy. So bam, 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 whoop, bam. Just like that. You might have noticed it felt a lot faster, so what was I doing? There's this thing that you can do when you play this game called animation canceling. So I'm going to show you what these light attacks look like. So I go 1 with a click, 2 with a click, 3 with a click, 4 with a click. That's your whole combo. But you can speed this up by aiming in between each swing. So let's take a look at this again. We go ba-bam, ba-bam, ba-bam. And then we'll test it out on this guy here, right? So we go bam, 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 and then we open up the opportunity to do a finisher. Now something else happened there that you might not have noticed that is very important when you were doing your finishers. So now pay close attention to this next skeleton here. We're gonna hit him, and we're gonna hit him, and then we're gonna hit him. And if you take a real close look here, you see that red skull that just popped up? That red skull means that if you perform your finisher, he's going to die. All right? So I go up here and finish up. If that red skull isn't there, but you get the F, instead what you're going to do is a special move that will do a lot of damage, but it's not going to outright kill the monster. The reason why this matters is because their balance bar gets reset when you do a finisher. Also, if you start doing a special move and the creature's not actually going to die, nobody else on your team can hit the creature because there's just a bunch of invincibility frames or iframes going on for both you and that creature during that moment. Now, one thing to know real quick is about stamina. So I'm going to go ahead and hit this guy. I'm going to dodge, but then go ahead and hit my F. And while I'm doing my finisher, I can actually start replenishing some of my stamina. You see my stamina just completely recovered there, and I don't even have it upgraded at all. So that's another thing to keep in mind while you're doing these finishers is that you can immediately dodge right when you're done, which makes you really shifty and hard to deal with for the demon. And on a similar note of animation canceling, you can go ahead and do this and then dodge and then swing again. I just think it's easier and faster to do the aiming thing where you alternate with your aiming. One more thing to know is that sprinting can affect how your attacks come out. So in the example of a heavy attack, if I'm sprinting and then I press heavy attack, I'll actually go ahead and do a kick instead of a heavy attack. And one final really useful tip when it comes to combat, especially with possessed creatures, is that they really suck at dealing with windows. So if you have a window, just keep popping in and out of it, especially if they're possessed, because if they're possessed, they're using up infernal energy to keep that possession up. And they really have a hard time getting through windows. Some people have figured out subtle ways to do it, but really, a window is going to kick a demon's butt all day long. They don't know what to do about it. But now let's talk about a little bit of the other side of combat, which is the possession and demon side. So if I go ahead here, hit this guy, I think I hit him one more time, right? You see how he's getting pretty beat up? He actually lost an arm. He's not in a good way. Well, if you happen to play demon and you see this happen to one of your creatures and you flip on over here, what you can do is if you possess this creature, what you'll see is it actually comes back to full health. It even regains its arm. Something I think you notice without saying is that a possessed creature has a red outline around them, in case you didn't already know that. But something way more important about those possessed creatures is that they can block your car. They don't care. They don't even take that much damage. A little bit of balance bar, sure, but you'll break your car before you break that guy. So let's do a quick lesson on traps, because there's a lot to learn here all at the same time. So one of the things you can do is you can change your trap type, and depending on the trap type you have will influence what happens to the survivor. Ash's hand causes a lot more damage and fear, whereas mini Ashes will actually steal items. So let's go ahead and set the trap up here. And then if I go ahead and I flip on over to survivor mode here, one thing you'll see is that I'm playing Ed. And Ed actually happens to have a really cool feature about him. The thing that Ed can do is he can press his Q button, and when he presses his Q button, it makes him able to disarm traps. So flip back on over here, and what you'll see is I'm going to click this on Ed. He has this fancy flashlight out, and then you'll see that it actually went and disarmed my trap, which really, really stinks for me. He can just go into that, loot it up, no big deal. And not only can Ed go ahead and disarm crates, he can disarm all sorts of stuff, and he can walk around and disarm trap areas that weren't even trapped to begin with. So now I can't lay a trap here, and I can't lay a trap in another high frequency area, such as the doorway or somewhere in the house. So if you want to have Ed go ahead and walk forward for your team and scout out the area, this is really, really helpful to keep your fear down, and it's really good at preventing the demon from accumulating more threat level. And these traps stay disabled for quite a long time. Like, these ones up here were gone for felt like a whole minute there, but honestly, I still can't disable the crate here. So once you cleanse the crate with Ed, it's good to go, and I can't repossess it. Oh my goodness. So I'll have to go into a different match to show you the mini ashes thing. But I guess now that we're pushed back to the menu, before we get back to talking about traps, there's a few things that are very important that you should pay attention to. One of which is you might see the resolution on my PC game here is actually really nice. I'll make a whole video about how to fix the resolution because it looks really crappy on PC. But more importantly, let's go over to collection here. In case you never noticed this, take a look at each class and they actually provide you a really nice description of what they do. So for support, for example, they each start with a Shem's Cola and an amulet, and they can carry more Shems and amulets. Also, whenever a Shems or amulet is used, the survivors in your aura gain positive effects. Every single support does this. I think a lot of people might think that only Cheryl does this, because if you go ahead and you take a look at her skill, specifically a level 25 skill, it says, when you drink a Shem's Cola, nearby teammates will also gain health. But now I'm under the impression that what it really means is everybody on the team gets 100 health whenever she drinks a Shem's Cola, which is awesome. But again, every single class has something like this. So ranged weapons deal more damage. Also, they have a slower stamina consumption, and you can carry more ammo if you're in the Hunter class. Warrior class starts with a lot more HP, and they do a lot more melee damage. And then the leaders are more resistant to fear, and they improve the stats of nearby teammates. So keep that in mind as you're going through all of these. Also, another thing to know about the collection is that every single warrior has the same path here. Look at all these different trees. It's going to be the same for every single warrior. Same thing with the hunters. All the hunters have the same path. All the supports have the same path. All the leaders have the same path. That's going to feel a little bit different than the warlord side, though, which every single warlord has their own thing going on, which makes sense because they all play very, very differently. Also, let's do the community a favor here. We have 4 different ashes, and it's a pain in the butt to say, well, leader ash or warrior ash or hunter ash, and then we say warrior ash, you say army of darkness ash. Wait, ash. Let's make it easy. We have leader ash, call him lash. We have warrior ash, call him wash. We have hunter ash, call him hash. We have support ash, call him sash. Make it easy. And then on the topic of each class having their own specialty, this really reflects itself in the pink F section of gameplay. So if I go into where I can upgrade my character, this is a support character, we're playing Cheryl. You'll see that Cheryl gets 3 melee, 3 range, 4 health, 3 fear, 3 stam, 3 shield. And to give you a really good example of what I'm talking about, let's gather a little bit of information out of this right here and then switch to the warrior class. So real quick, we see our health is max of 900 and then we get 4 upgrades for it, right? Well, if we go over to melee, we'll see we have 3 upgrades, and the 3rd level is plus 12% melee damage, plus 5% attack speed. Cool. And then take a look at shields. We can go up to level 3 shields, which just means more shield bars. Now, let's switch on over to the warrior here and see what that looks like. So now I'm loaded in as Wash, or Warrior Ash, and if I go ahead and I press tab here, you'll see very different options. We actually have 5 melee available, and we have 5 shields available. We have a little bit less on the fear and stamina, but also take a look at our health here. It says our max health is at 1300 at base level instead of 900. So very different types of things you can get out of this class. So what this means to me is that you probably want to prioritize your points into something that your class is really good at, because you'll see level 4 and level 5. Look at that, 20% melee damage, 20% attack speed. Those are huge buffs to your DPS on melee. Same thing with the shields. You'll get an extra 15% shield per bar, and with a warrior class, you can actually fill up 2 shield bars with 1 amulet. So keep this in mind when you're playing each one of these classes. They get really good at certain things. The leaders have really big fear stat, so they can make it so they're almost impossible to be possessed. And then the ranged characters are really good at dodging because of their stam and running, and they also get really good range damage. And really what you should be doing with that information is, let's say you are a warrior and you found a legendary gun. What you should be doing is say, hey, I just found this legendary blunderbuss. Let's give it over to Amanda or Kelly. Or in this case, we have Evil Dead 2 Ash or Hash. Go give it to Hash because they're going to do more with it than your warrior would. And then if they get a legendary sword, they should give it to your warrior because you could do more with it as the warrior. A really good rule of thumb typically with games is, if you're good at something, get even better at it. That's how you break things. If you try to be a generalist and do a little bit of everything, you just kind of like a soggy pretzel. Go ahead and just really specialize in, get really sharp at what you're good at, and you'll be able to just slam the enemy. Same thing goes with real life, right? You don't remember people who are kind of good at everything. You remember the people who are really good at something. One thing we started doing in our groups is we learned that we can use our aura skills while the other folks are in the car. So in the case of Evil Dead 1 Ash, let's say a bunch of people have high fear on the team, but we're all in a car. We can pull the car over, have just Ash get out, use his Q ability where he lowers everybody's fear, and then everybody in the car's fear is going to go down. It works with a bunch of different abilities. Try it out. Now back onto the topic of trapping things. If you see this, we have a scare trap right here. It says it costs 25. So if we go ahead and we set up this trap, take a look at the bottom right-hand corner. We're going to gain ourselves about, I don't know, 20-ish EXP for that. Now, not all of these are created equal. So if I come over here and I set up a tree, what you're going to see is we get ourselves about, I don't know, 10. So not anywhere near as much. It costs, what, 10 or 15 to set that up? And you got about 10 back. However, some of these get you a lot of experience. So in the case of this box right here, it costs 35 to set up the trap. However, we get ourselves about 100 EXP off of it. So it's actually really, really nice. So what you'll see right now in the distance is a trap that's set up, and there's mini ashes inside of that trap. So let's go ahead and flip on over to Ash here and see what happens. Take a look at the screen here. I'm going to open this up. And we have mini ashes inside of it. And you'll see we took a little bit of damage. We're actually really resilient to fear here. But more importantly, very quickly, what you might have saw there was a minus 14. So we lost some items because we opened up a chest with mini ashes in it. So we actually have two views going on here. The one on the bottom right-hand corner is the survivor's view, and the one on the big screen is the demon view. Now, something I want to show you here is how you can counter having your vehicle possessed. So you'll see here that my demon actually has a pretty decent amount of infernal energy right now. So if I wanted to, I could possess this car, and possessing the car is not a cheap thing. It costs about, what, 100? So let's go ahead and possess the car and see what starts happening. So if we possess the car, you'll see that our infernal energy goes down and immediately starts draining, right? But now something that Ash can do when he gets kicked out is if he shoots the car, you actually really drain the infernal energy of the possessed car. So this can make it so you could get back into the car a lot faster if you hit it with your firearm. Now, that is going to damage your car, but it can keep your car from being driven off who knows how many freaking yards down the road. It can really save your team a lot of time and a lot of hassle, and it'll drain a lot of the infernal energy. This is very similar to when the demon possesses a survivor, because their infernal energy is constantly draining after they possess that survivor. But something to know about that is if you are a demon and you possess a survivor, every time you damage another survivor, you're going to gain infernal energy to kind of offset the fact that it's constantly draining. So try to get your damage in whenever you possess someone. And actually, since we have both of these cameras up right now, let me show you something here regarding the charge skill. So if you play Demon, and if you've watched my Demon tips video, you've already become familiar with the charge skill. But what it does is you can charge up your ability here, get the little teeth on the screen, and when you charge, you can scare the enemy. So, but something you might have noticed there is that jump scare. If you've ever wondered where those jump scares come from, it's because the demon just phased through you. So what you can do with that information as a survivor is realize that they just got a bunch of infernal energy off of you, and you got to get ready because they're about to start laying stuff all around you. And now I can't really show this to you, but something to know about possessing survivors at the end of the game is you can actually shoot the Necronomicon. Because at the very end, the survivors are trying to protect the Necronomicon. If you take over a survivor, you can damage that book. Also, any survivors that die in the final phase of the game, again, the book phase after the dark ones, if they go down, they're dead. They absolutely die. There's no getting revived at that point in the game. So now let's talk about the Flautist and the Necromancer, because by far one of the most common strategies in the game right now is people using the Flautist to get easy wins. Understandably so, because it gives a 70% damage buff. So let's lay our Flautist down here. Something to know about the Flautist right away is he has a 75-second cooldown. However, he lasts for 90 seconds. But just how far is that range? Let's go ahead and take a look. So if I go ahead and put a ping right on top of our Flautist here, just like this, what you'll see is I can cast a Skelly Boy here and start backing up. And as long as we have that red aura around our head, we are influenced by the Flautist. So let's just see how far it is, because it's a lot farther than I think people think it is. Because I see a lot of players put the Flautist right on top of the survivors and it gets destroyed right away. But look at how far this goes. We are currently at what? 49 yards right now? 52 yards? 52 yards is about where it's fallen off here, right? And then I think I'm probably gonna have to walk a little bit in to re-energize it. So about what, 49 yards is the new entry territory? And then we can back it up a little bit and you get a couple extra yards to play with at the looks of it. So about 50-ish yards, 49 yards is about how far it can reach. So utilize that. I can't even see the dang thing over there. And its range is everywhere. So if you have a building like a 2-story house, throw that freaking thing in the top of the house and then fight people 40 yards away over on the ground somewhere in this direction. It's got intense range, and you could really utilize that to your advantage. So how are you actually going to use that information in a match? Well, it's pretty simple. All you really have to do is go into your map and go ping right here, and then you can use these pings as a way to measure how far you can place your Flautist down. Another thing you can know is that if you are on the Necronomicon pages or the Dagger and they start these objectives, the radius around these is about 14 yards. So if you want to have the entire thing covered, you just have to go ahead and take that, what, 50-ish yards, and then take the radius, 14 yards each way, so 50 minus 28. That means if you are, let's go ahead and say, what, 22 yards away, you have the entirety of the pages covered. But if you don't care about the second half of that, well, then you just go ahead and 50 minus 14, and you actually have a range of about 36. And now you have half of the circle covered. So if you're bringing most of the fight to this half of the circle, you can use that to your advantage. But another really useful way that you can do this is, look, we have the pages right there, but we also have this house right here. So if we want to be a really big pain in the butt here, like a really big pain, take a look. We got pretty good range right here. I can place my Flautist, what, up in here? Now, they would have to come all the way into this frickin' house in order to go ahead and fight with you. And I can go ahead and drag a skeleton over there just to show you what I'm talking about here. Let me possess this guy. And I'm going to bring him over to where the pages would be. Because, again, there's that 14-yard radius, right? And you'll see I'm covered right now. Ta-da! Covered within a whole lot of this. I'd have to go pretty far to not be covered. And look, there's even hedges here to make it so they have to stay in here anyway. So, yeah. Really, really nice ways to use the Flautist. There ain't no way they're going up there. And if they do go up there, they run the risk of getting stuck up there. Because something to know is that if you go ahead and go up that ladder, well, you don't really have a way to get down, or those stairs, I should say. You don't really have a way to get down unless you walk back down the stairs. So you can just go here and clump stuff up on top of them, get a guy surrounded over here, and ta-da, easy wins. So if Word goes after the Flautist right now, I'm gonna go chase after him. What I could do in this scenario is I could go ahead and then take over Han while he's going after Flautist. And then if I pull you out, that might reset the pages, won't it? Yeah, look, the pages are losing progress because nobody's in it.
Oh.
Now, I mean, you'd have to have everybody down, but like, especially in the scenario where people think about splitting up, this would be a really good way to handle that. Ignited light sources provide a lot more fear reduction than natural light sources. Like if you see a lamp somewhere over on, let's say, these trailers over here, it's not going to do a whole lot. But if you ignite something, your fear reduction is going to skyrocket. So now let's set up a trap with Ash's hand here, and you can see the difference between Ash's hand versus the mini Ashes. So our fear is pretty low, our health's pretty high. Let's go ahead and open up the crate here. And what you'll see is we take a lot more damage than we did before, and our fear went up a lot higher than it did before. We didn't really lose any items either. So those are the big differences between the mini Ashes and the Ash's hand. I love being able to have two cameras here. This is really, really helpful. So something to know is that at the beginning of the game, you should try to be as quiet as you can as a survivor. So take a look, and I have Annie in the bottom right-hand corner here, and I'm going to take a shot. And what you see is it made noise on my demon screen here. So if I go ahead and I bring up my demon screen, what you'll see is Annie's pretty far away. I'll go ahead and take another shot, and she'll show back up. These shots make it so that you can be heard. Also, getting in a vehicle makes it so you can be heard. Try to go ahead and be stealthy, use melee, don't make a lot of noise, because that gives you more time to loot without the demon finding you. Because typically, after the demon finds you, he's not going to leave you alone for the rest of the match. So try to keep it quiet. Something to know about this noise making, though, is that Pablo does not make noise. You can shoot with a gun, and Pablo is not going to show up, which is a really cool feature of Pablo. One other thing to know is that you can drive over the souls of people that have died. So if you want to body block, what you can do, really want to be ferocious about it, is take a car, park it over a dead person, and then try to break the car or get a possessed unit in front of the car. People try to drive it away from it. And then if that car breaks down on top of that soul, they're never going to revive them. It's kind of toxic, but it's totally something you can do if you're really sweating. A nice strategy or call out that you can do, especially if you're playing a support character like Cheryl, is say, hey, I'm going to use my heal here, everybody collapse on, and then the point that you can use is something like the dagger or the Necronomicon, or just use some sort of object that people can see really easily and tell them that's where your heal is going to be. That way they run towards it. I'll be like, heal's going down on book in 3, 2, 1, and then I place my heal, and that gives them time to get over there, get their heals off, and things don't get wasted. We stream just about every single night on twitch.tv/SwingPoynt. If you want more tips like this and you want to keep learning the game as we keep learning it, please consider subscribing down below and checking out the stream. If you found this video helpful at all, please tell me some of the tips that you found helpful, or go ahead and leave some tips yourself that you found out that you think people might find helpful. Again, I hope you found this helpful. I'm really excited to keep covering this game, and thank you so much for watching. And I'll see you guys in the next video that we do around here.